theyeshiva.net.
So you got it, page 22, the second column, the line starts, V'zeu inyan Yom Tov. V'zeu inyan Yom Tov, Gilui HaSimcha. You see, mamash the middle of the page. You had Aleph, column 4, 22, on top it says Tzav. The Baal HaTanya addresses in this Maimer what we say in the Haggadah, that the matzah that we eat commemorates the fact that the Jewish people did not have time to allow their dough to ferment in Egypt. Why? Because usually under normal circumstances, the bakers allow the dough to sit and ferment and rise and inflate and allow the various processes which turn dough into leaven, into chametz. But in this case, they were expelled from Egypt at once. The Egyptians could not tolerate their presence there even for one more moment, because Paro and his people have been brought to their knees as a result of the 10th and final smashing plague. And thus the Jewish people were expelled. Go, 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 Gershom and Mitzrayim. And they needed to immediately place the dough in the oven without any delay. Hence, we eat matzah to commemorate this event. As we all say in the Seder, matzah zu shanu eichlem al shum ma, al shum shloi hispik betzekas shalaveseinu lahachmetz, ad shenigla melech malcha amlochem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu aleim u'ga'olam. And his question was, the great question was, that l'cha'ira, that's not the reason we eat matzah. Even if that would have never happened, we would still eat matzah on the night of Pesach, because there's a mitzvah min ha-Torah to eat matzah on the night of Pesach, be'erev toichlu matzahs. In fact, the first time around, there was also a mitzvah to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach. The night before they left Egypt, even before Malchus B'chayres, there was a mitzvah in Parshas Boy, Achodesh Hazal Lachem. He said, on this night, you should eat matzah, together with Moror, together with the Karban Pesach. Even if that event would have never happened. That was the question. Parenthetically, this question repeats itself in a later Maimer, also printed in Parshas Tzav, called Sheishes Yamim. Sheishes Yamim Teichel Matzahs, which we learned, I think, 2 or 3 years ago before Pesach. A longer and fascinating Maimer, also about Pesach. It's on the yeshiva.net. The Chatzos. Pre-Chatzos Matzah, post-Chatzos Matzah. Tell you tikkun why we eat. Very fundamental Maimer. And we didn't finish it then before Pesach. I think I did an audio recording. And so that's, you could listen to it and learn it before Pesach. It's an amazing Maimer. It's on the yeshiva.net in Pesach, in the Likkutei Torah Pesach section. Here he also asks, this first question he asks here also. But he also adds another interesting thing, another anomaly, that the Gemara teaches us in Pesachim, a Mishnah and a Gemara, that in the original Pesach, the Isser of Chametz was only one day, the first day. Where today, in commemoration of Pesach, the prohibition of Chametz continues for 7 days, besides Erev Pesach, when you have to get rid of the Chametz. Another 7 days, or in Chutz La'aretz, of course, 8 days. Which is also a very interesting anomaly, because you're commemorating the original Pesach. So l'chayda, as the question in Gemara, when you're deriving your entire legitimacy from something else, so then you shouldn't be stronger than that source from which you're deriving your entire existence. The whole point of celebration of Pesach is a commemoration of what happened during the first Pesach, and now we're like, as they call it, more stringent, huh? Yeah. There's also an expression in Yiddish, frimme with the pipest. Yeah. Lahavdil, of course, but it seems strange. There, the Isser Chametz is one day. In order to understand this, so first he introduced the idea, al pi nigla pashat, that gufa is the point, because the Isser Chametz was only one day. So therefore, naturally, they could have eaten chametz the whole Pesach, meaning the next 7 days they could have eaten chametz. Because the Isser was only the first day, the next 6 days they could have eaten chametz. And the only reason they didn't was, why? Because because they didn't have time for the dough to ferment, because they didn't have time for the dough for the ferment. So therefore, that was the reason that actually the absence of chametz existed for the continuous days. So when we're not eating chametz during the continuous days of Pesach, what is it? That's a commemoration of the fact that lo hispik b'tzekas shloviseinu lahachmetz. That was the first idea introduced, sourcing it in the Mizrahi.
Matzah for 7 days.
Yeah. That was Hashem's way of giving them matzah for 7 days and taking away chametz from them for 7 days, which in our times, subsequently, it's not expressed through that physical experience per se, but through the mitzvah not to eat chametz and to have matzah for 7 days. In order to understand all of this and to understand the concept of matzah, he said we have to understand more the concept of moyadim l'simcha, that Yomim Tovim were given primarily for simcha, v'samachta b'chagecha, and something that we find that Shabbos doesn't have this quality as much as Yom Tov. Of course, it says about Shabbos, ein eitzav ba, and the Sifri also says b'yom simchaschem elu ha-Shabbosis. But generally, the focus of Shabbos is described more as Oineg Shabbos, the mitzvah of Oineg, the karasel Shabbos Oineg, the pasuk says. Yom Tov is associated primarily with simcha even more than Shabbos. L'cha'ira. In Arizal, the Kisvei Arizal, Shabbos is higher than Yom Tov. Shabbos is a gili of Moichen de Abba. Yom Tov is a gili of Moichen de Ima, which are mystical terms representing the mind of the father and the mind of the mother, which he will explain. In order to understand this, the Baal HaTanya started to say that there's two types of giluyim of Ein Sof Baruch Hu. That's the key. Two types of flows of the divine energy that can be experienced in life. Number one is what he calls Seder Hishtalshalus, Hamshacha Me'ila Le'ila, to quote his words. And number two is L'mayla Min Hishtalshalus. One is that goes through the flow of Hishtalshalus, which we explained yesterday in the previous year. And then there's L'mayla Min Hishtalshalus beyond that. Or the other term he uses, Yesh Me'yesh versus Yesh Me'ayin. Something from nothing versus something from something. In the first case, when an alul gets close to its ilah, an alul is the offspring, the ilah is its source, the antecedent. And whenever there's a hiskarvus, there's a closeness between the alul and the ilah, that creates a tremendous simcha in both of them. Just like a child in captivity who returns to the father or the mother, there's a tremendous joy because the distance is what creates such a tension and such a sense of agony and anguish. And when the prince returns to daddy, to the king or to the queen, there is a tremendous joy. And he says that's the simcha of the alul when it experiences the light of the ilah. Instead of being distant and instead of being concealed and instead of being remote, now it can comprehend and experience who it really is. As it leaves darkness and enters into light, grief and enters into happiness, and enslavement and enters into redemption, there's a tremendous sense of joy. And that's really what simcha is. And he says, V'zeu inyan Yom Tov. This is the inyan of Yom Tov. Gilui hasimcha v'zeu inyan Yom Tov. You see, mamash in the middle of the page, the line starts V'zeu 22. On top it should say Tzav. V'zeu inyan Yom Tov. That's what Yom Tov represents. Gilui hasimcha. The revelation of a state we call simcha, happiness. And it's expressed in Hallel. On Yom Tov there's the obligation to say Hallel, not on Shabbos. And what's the first chapter of Hallel from Tehillim, Kapitel Kuf Yudalet? It starts off with Hallelu, Hallelu Avdei Hashem, and it ends, Moishivi Akeres Habayis, Eim Habonim Semecha Hallelujah. The literal translation is, Moishivi means he restores, he brings back, like Lahashiv, right? Hashiva Shiftenu. Akeres Habayis. Literally, the pshat is Akeres Habayis from the word Akara, somebody who's infertile, somebody who cannot have children, a barren woman. Moishivi Akeres Habayis. He brings her back to become the leader of a home. Eim Habonim, a mother of children, Smecha. Instead of being in a state of distress because she feels so lonely, with no future, with no continuity. Moishivi Akeres Habayis, Eim Habonim Smecha Hallelujah. So the source of simcha, how he defines there is, Eim Habonim Smecha. That's the Hallel that we say on Yom Tov. But he teaches here, what's the Gili HaSimcha? Shemibchinas HaKeres HaBayis Nasa Em Abanim Smecha. That from a woman being barren in her home, a home which is an akara, an empty home, an empty nest, there's no nest, she is transformed into an Em Habanim Smecha, a mother of children who is rejoicing. Pirush, the meaning of this is, Ki Akeres Miloshin Akara. The word Akeres is derived from the term Akara, which means barren and fertile. Umiloshin Kechul Dezu Hadara Beikre Batim, Begemara Perek Basu de Pesach. And the Gemara in the last Perek of Pesachim, Arvei Pesachim, explains that it's like this weasel which lives Beikre Batim in the foundations below the homes. That's where the weasels and the rats and the mice hang out. The Gemara says over there, it's Pesachim Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis. The Gemara says that Reish Lakish said, when it says Moshivi Akeres Habayis, Amra Knesses Yisrael, the Jewish people told Hashem, this is the last Perek of Pesachim, one of the last Dafim of Pesachim, the Jewish people tell the Ribbono Shel Olam, Amra Knesses Yisrael, Ribbono Shel Olam, Samuni Banecha Kechul Dezu Adara Beikre Batim. Some of your children have placed me like the weasel, like the weasel which lives in the foundations of the home. In other words, in a very, very lowly place. That's the Akeres Habayis. Kechul dezu hadara beikre batim. Iker is like the fundamental, the basis, which is always all the way on the bottom. So you throw somebody, under the bus, under the house. That's called ikre batim. So we see akara. Akeres comes from the word akara, that's what the Mefarshim say. The Gemara also gives us the second interpretation, Reish Lakish, ikre batim, which means all the way down, down, down. Throw me under the house, like the chulda, like the weasel. That's where the weasel lives, the chulda lives. That's where they have put me. Moshivi, they have placed me. Akeres habayis, beikre batim, below the basement, subterranean cellars of the home in its foundational layers. The bowels of the home, and from there I was transformed into Eim Habanim Smecha, into a mother of children who is happy. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. What's the connection? This is all the same point, what simcha is. Simcha is when the Alul comes back to the Ilah, when there is that reunification, when the distance that is unnatural, because the Alul really comes from the Ilah. The Alul is rooted in the Ilah. The Alul is the child of the Ilah. And when that child has been in captivity and alienation and comes back, that's where the great joy comes. Joy comes from that experience when you are restored back to your own core, when you are at peace with yourself, when there's true harmony between who you are and who you're supposed to be. It's called the matching moment. The matching moment where your mind, your body, and your soul are in harmony. When you're aligned with your true self. Alignment is the source of simcha. When there is alienation from the true self, the opposite of alignment, when there is distance, there is a sense of distress. There is a sense of pain. And we have to compensate for that pain in one way or another, but that's where a void is created. That's the absence of simcha. The void hurts us. And there are different lives. There's a life that dedicates itself to fill that void. But how do I fill that void? One way of filling that void is through simcha. Another way of filling that void is through distractions. The deeper the void, the greater the distractions that are necessary to fill the void. Small void, small distractions. Big void, big distractions. Awesome void, awesome distractions. In many ways, the more the Alul is sensitive to the pain of being distant from itself, the greater the void, the greater the hole, the greater the sense of emptiness. The deeper the distractions, the deeper the distractions that are necessary in order to refill the void, right? And that's the difference. You have to always ask yourself in your life, how am I filling my voids? Am I filling my voids through helping them really be filled, so they're not voids anymore? Am I filling my voids through simply distancing myself further from myself and the void so that they don't distract me because I'm not even here to see it. And that's the big difference between simcha and fun. Or not fun, I mean fun is a pretty good thing, but simcha and distractions, fun that are distractions of the joy rather than the joy. So Moishivi Akeres Habayis, from being the chulda beikre batim, quite an interesting interpretation in the Gemara, being that weasel in the bowels of the home, in the gutter, under the home, becomes Eim Habonim Smecha, a mother of children Smecha.
Why use the weasel?
Why the Gemara uses chulda? Why don't you ask that question on the Mishnah Daf Tesam at Aleph? Ein Choshesh Shema Girur chulda. Masechta Pesachim is busy a lot with chuldas because the Chazal had a lot of experience that under their homes there were weasels who were schlepping chametz from one place to another place, from one house to another house, from one city to another city. That's why the chuldas are very prominent in Masechta Pesachim.
So you could say that Allah was trying to weasel out of the weasel.
Very good. Very good. The Hallel is trying to weasel out of the Ilah. Very good. And you got to weasel it back in. Yeah. Okay. That's why this is the summation of the first chapter of Hallel. Vihi, on a spiritual level, this represents Pchinas Malchus, the quality of divine Malchus, which is connected always to femininity. Shemalubeshes kol yoimin, which all the days of the week it is enclosed, it's manifested. Shemalubeshes kol yoimin dechayil, all the days of the week, meaning the mundane days, yimei hachayil. The quality, in Kabbalistic words, the quality of Hashem's Malchus, his characteristic, is manifested Bibriya, Yitzira, Asiya. It descends into the world of Briya, further down into the world of Yitzira, further down into the world of Asiya, which are various forms of Ishtalshalus, in which the energy devolves from higher to lower. Kain, B'klipas Noiga, until it enters into the world of Klipas Noiga, which is a shell and a husk that eclipses the light of Malchus. Kain, Pirish, B'Sefer, Shushan, Soidus, L'Talmud HaRamban, Zechroina Levroch. The Ramban, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman, who lived in the 13th century in Spain, was considered one of the great Kabbalists of his time, in a time when Kabbalah was far less popular. It's a few centuries before the Arizal, who really spread it to much of the Jewish world, relatively speaking. Nonetheless, the Ramban and his students were great Kabbalists, and he has a student who wrote a sefer called Shushan Soidus, quite unfamiliar today. And over there he teaches that the Gemara, which says Chul dezu hadara beikre batim, represents the quality of Malchus, which goes down all the way down to the bottom. Bri, Yitzira, Asiya, Klipas Noiga, that's the Akeres Habayis. Now, when that's restored, that's what he's going to say. Ubi Yom Tif, he oila l'mayla. On Yom Tif, that characteristic, so to speak, comes back up. From the bottom of the home, it's transformed into Pchinas Eim Habonim, into a mother of children, which represents Bina v'hasaga ba'ir ein soif haniglaaz. There is a sense of Ima. Ima represents the mother of children represents Bina. Comprehension, understanding. Hasaga is comprehension. In the light of infinity, which is revealed on Yom Tov, Sha'od Ein Sof Mishtal Shel V'Yored Us, because on Yom Tov there is a divine energy of infinity that evolves and comes down then, ba'ofen, in a way, she'yeh derech u'mavoy l'tfisa v'hasaga. There should be a path and an opportunity for some form of grasping, for some form of awareness and comprehension. Of course, he qualifies that which one could comprehend from the light of infinity, which is revealed. And one can also comprehend how this gilui, this manifestation, is intense, it's great, until it's transformative, from yagain, from mourning to joy. V'shahayu b'choshech ro or gadol, an expression in Yeshaya. Those who were in the pasuk in Yeshaya says, ha'am ha'holchim b'choshech ro or gadol. The nation, I think it's Yeshaya, the nation that was in darkness saw a great light. Yeshaya Perik Tes, Pasuk Aleph. So he uses that expression that Ha'am Haro B'chaysh Gadol Hu Gilui Eirein Seif Baruch Hu. This is the revelation of the light of the Infinite One, blessed be Hamizgala, which is revealed on Yom Tov, B'Bchinis Yesh V'Hasaga, in a way that is something. Yesh means something that's graspable, something that's relatable to the mind, to the bina. V'hasaga, it comes down in a way that can be grasped or comprehended or reached. Hasaga means reached. Lahasig, which is also connected to the word hasaga, which is comprehension, right? Say havana v'hasaga, it's all the same thing. When I understand something, I reach it to some degree. There's reaching something tangibly, physically. There's reaching something more abstract through our mind. That every Jew is then empowered and has the opportunity to have some tfisa, some grasp, some hasaga in the light of the face of the King of the Rebbeinu Shalom revealed then. A metaphor for this would be, or a comparison for this would be, when we speak of a soul, this is the mashal for Yom Tov. When we speak of a soul which is the lighting itself, it's experiencing the light in Olam Haba. What's Olam Haba? Ziv HaShchina, the ray of the Shchina. What happens in Olam Haba that there's a tainuk from Ziv HaShchina? Instead of the soul which is manifested and often eclipsed in its material container, v'nifrida misham. When the soul leaves that place, the soul doesn't disappear. What happens after 120 years? The neshama ascends l'mekar chaytzva. Mekar chaytzva means the source from where it was honed. Chaytzev, machzev is like, honed. From where we chisel out the stones, the quarries where you bring your chaytzev, the stone. So it's a metaphor here. Mekar chaytzva, the source from where the soul was carved out. It goes back, and thus it lives in pure delight in Gan Eden Elyon, in the higher paradise, v'nenis miziv hashchina, in the expression of Chazal, and she enjoys the radiance of the Shchina, meaning hana v'tainug nifla, which is a wondrous and extraordinary hana and tainug. The Rambam says it can't even be described in words how profound that is. That's my shivi akeres habayis. From akeres habayis, Malchus being all the way down, the person, the soul, sometimes a person is all the way in the dumps, completely alienated from my source. And when that akeres habayis is transformed into aim habonim, which, using the idea of the Shushan Soidas, the Talmud HaRamban, is Malchus going back to its source, the Alul, re-encountering itself with its ilah, and they become one once again, because they were one, and then there was this hishtalshalus, and this distance, and this concealment, Briya, Yitzira, Asiya, Klipas Noiga, and all that. That is what creates simcha. And that's what happens when the alul comes close to the ilah, and it comprehends it, it becomes aware of it, which is its ultimate self-awareness, of course. So as he put it before, he says, Vatihi simcha g'doila, that generates a tremendous sense of joy, like the child coming out of captivity and coming back to its source.
At the risk of the Kabbalistic lashon, we try to understand better this idea of Chul being Malkhus. The old coming back to its source, I understand, but that the Chul is Malkhus and Malkhus is sort of climbing back up. It's a lot vague.
I have to look it up in the Shushan Soidas. I didn't have a chance. I'll look it up, Bli Neder, to see how he explains it exactly, why he connects it to the Chulda. There has to be a little more to it, which would explain why they chose the word Chulda as well. In other words, it's always, when you're talking in Pshat, they chose Chulda because you got to choose some animal. If they would say a rat, you'd say, why a rat? And they say a mouse, why a mouse, right? And if they would say, some other rodent or insect or animal, you would ask that. But al pipnimius, there's always a diuk, why dafke Chulda somehow, it expresses this point. Bli Neder, look it up.
What's Malchus in this?
Okay, so very general terms, when we use the term Malchus, Malchus is considered that quality and characteristic of Hashem that creates otherness, that is responsible for otherness. We say, Ein melech beloy am, famous expression of the Rishonim, right? There's no melech without a nation. There's no king if there's no people. I could do a lot of things myself. I can't be a leader myself. Or we sometimes describe Malchus as the relationship with a spouse. Malchus is femininity, right? So a person could do a lot of things, but they can't be married to themselves. You could be a poet on your own. You could be brilliant on your own. You can also be a lover on your own. You know, some of the greatest lovers in humanity are people who don't know, who live on their own. You live on the top of a mountain and you write poetry about love. All of the spheres, Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, they can all be experienced within the person vis-a-vis himself or herself. You can't be married to yourself. You can't experience marriage without being married. There's no leadership. You can't be a leader. Why? The very definition of this quality is born from the relationship. It's not an imagination about a relationship. It's the quality that is born from the contact, from the feedback, from, if you want to speak, say, from the head-on-head collision of two people, from the actual interaction. Malchus is born, I'll just give an example. This example is brought in Chassidus. I'll just give it contemporary terms. The President of the United States, and this is not relevant who the President is. I'm not talking about the persona of the President. I'm talking about the position of the presidency, what we call the position, the office, right? What happens on the day that the President of the United States, most powerful person in the free world, is inaugurated as president? It's not that day he got his degree in law, or that day he got his degree in political science, or that day he got his degree in foreign affairs to be able to understand foreign affairs. Whatever the president knew yesterday, he knows today. Whatever he didn't know yesterday, he doesn't know today, right? But he's a completely new person. Completely new person. What happens to the medical school student, the medical student, who studied for 15 years, Yoimam Valayla, because he wanted to know his stuff, day and night, right? And he passed and he did well, etc. The day that he's appointed to that position, running the whole department of cardiology or neurology or pediatrics in that particular hospital or clinic. What he knew yesterday in medicine is what he knows today. What he didn't know yesterday doesn't know today. But he's a different person. He's a completely different person. What happened? Malchus. Malchus emerged. And Malchus transforms a person. On one hand, we say, the Zohar says, Leisla megar maklum. Malchus has nothing. The moon, its entire light is a reflection of the sun. It has nothing of its own. Nothing happens to you when you become a melech in terms of substance. But everything happens to you when you become a melech. Why? Because it's the position that turns you into a different person. Now your whole knowledge, your whole experience is crystallized. It comes to the fore. There's a sense of urgency, of responsibility. There are hundreds or thousands of lives that are dependent upon you. In the case of a president, hundreds of millions of lives. In many ways, much of the world is impacted by you. You're a different person. Do you know anything you didn't know yesterday? Yeah, maybe the CIA and the Chevra will have to tell you, some facts about what's going on in ISIS. That's probably before the inauguration. But you understand, that can't happen in your room. That can't happen in your room. Somebody will say, I imagine that I'm married. Yeah, imagine that you're married. Beautiful imagination. That has to do with marriage, yeah? You understand? What's the connection between that and marriage? What? Even when you're married 5 years, you don't know what it is. You understand what I'm saying? Malchus necessitates otherness. What's the nimshal? All the spheres of Hashem can be experienced within Ein Oid Mulvadai, God himself. But Malchus requires a relationship. So it's the quality of Malchus of the Rebbeinu Shel Olam that is responsible for the sense of separateness. I can't be a melech within myself. I can't be married to myself. No, leadership is about the people and your relationship with the people and how they impact you. Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't learn nothing new when he came to him, when he became a leader. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't given new information. He didn't get, but he was a different person. Till this moment, you were a private person shepherding the flock of your father-in-law on a very, very lofty level. The moment a person becomes a melech, something happens. An essence, an essential quality comes out. That's called midas hamalchus. That can only happen through those who are outside of you. Ein melech b'loy am. It can't even happen through your own family. You can't be a king over your own family. Ein melech b'loy am. Because a family, it's part of you. It's a father and children, not Malchus. It's like I'm a king over my hand. My hand and my brain are the same thing. It's one organism. It's always the stranger, it's somebody else. And that's why the antithesis of Malchus is narcissism. Because the whole identity of Malchus is the relationship, how you impact the other. So all the other qualities, the Baal HaTanya explains, all the other qualities of Hashem can come out, so to speak, within his infinity. But Malchus is what requires someone outside of you. Malchus is the relationship with somebody who's not you. For Hashem to be a melech, it's the midas hamalchus that requires otherness, that requires a yesh, a world that is separate, at least in its own perception, and now can create a relationship. That's why the expression is Malchus leaves the domain of Atzilus and enters Bria Yitzira. Say, what does this mean? So people who learn these types of svarim are familiar with this language. But it's very, very important to understand what it really means, because this is all metaphoric. Malchus doesn't leave anywhere, and it doesn't climb down on a ladder, and it doesn't crawl in like a weasel into Bria Yitzira Asiya. It's metaphoric. What's the metaphor? The metaphor is if there is something I'm doing because of a particular passion I have, that passion is fueling the activity that I'm doing. Somebody is very, very ambitious, and they're up at 5 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, they're sitting by their desk, because their ambition for success in business knows no bounds. You all know that, you all know that, you all understand the tipus. You will feel that ambition throughout every telephone call that they make. You feel that ambition. In other words, that ambition is the fuel, it's the gas, it's the soul that is behind all of these activities. And you have to always identify, what is the neshama behind what I'm doing? What is fueling my activity? Right. Is it coming, for an example, a simple example would be, sometimes a person has to be successful at work for one simple reason. They need the validation of the people. They want to prove that they are successful. Their entire life they have felt that they were failures, and they need people to say that they are successful. As somebody once told me, when I went into business, I made a vow, and that is, I'm going to force people to say that they need me. I always felt unneeded, and I'm now going to feel needed, which means this person could never ever know what his real ambitions are, because everything he's doing is to fill a tremendous insecurity. I'm going to make you feel need. I'm going to make me feel needed. You're going to see how indispensable I am. So his entire raison d'etre, how do you say that in Yiddish? His entire purpose is what? To fill a void that comes from tremendous insecurity. So all that power is really a cover-up of a bottomless pit of insecurity. But there's always the soul that's driving it. So now when you ask the question, what's the soul behind Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, Klippa? What divine energy is fueling it? What's the energy in it? What's the answer? Malchus. Malchus. Malchus is there. It's God's desire for the relationship. Malchus, that's what we mean. Malchus leaves and goes down into Bria and Sirasiya. What is the divine energy at the core of human separateness, of human ego? What is it? There's divine energy. The ego also is divine energy. Ego means easing God out, but that itself is divine energy. What is it? It's Malchus. That's what we mean. Malchus leaves the source and descends all the way down to the lowest places. Because what's the passion? What's the will of Hashem? that creates a world that's separate from him, whether it's Bria or Yitzira, Asiya, which are just grades of separateness, it's the desire for Malchus. You grasp? Reb Aaron, verstehst? Okay. Good, yeah, that's good, don't worry.
It's an illusion.
Oh, now you sound like you know who.
My missus would save you. But it seems rather facile.
Okay.
There's this whole paradigm that says that God's relationship, there's no king without a none.
You're saying it's only from our perception.
Yeah, I mean you have to include that ingredient in it.
Okay. Right. Right. That we experience ourselves as outside.
I myself experience the Malchus
of Hashem, right, right. And that was extremely important to Hashem, that quality.
That we should look behind the curtain, so to speak.
Look behind the curtain, yeah. Umalchusai biratzon kiblu aleihim. That's the idea of Malchus on Rosh Hashanah, right? Shetamlichuni aleichem. The Gemara says, Hashem asks the Jewish people, please make me your king. Really? It's like Hashem, the Gemara says there in Rosh Hashanah Daf Tezayin, Hashem says, Imru lefanei Malchus b'shon shetamlichuni aleichem. Please do me a favor, could you coronate me? What is this, the mayor spending $100 million so that he's reelected? And if I don't coronate God, what's going to happen? If I say, I'm not coronating you, have a good day, I'm not interested. Really, what exactly is going to happen? Oh, he's Kenig? He's not king anymore. What's this bakasha? He's asking the Jewish people, Tamlichuni aleichem. But that's the definition of Malchus.
But it makes it even more valid.
Exactly. Ein mekatchen es ha'isha ela medaita. Yeah, exactly.
See, I learn more from her in some ways, but
Zesto?
I'm able to aspire. Better at.
If you force a woman into a marriage, it's not a marriage. It's not consent. It's not marriage.
I'm consenting to a relationship.
Yataza. Umalchusai biratzon kiblu aleihim. That's the difference of a melech and a moshel. Balatanya writes this, the Vilna Gaon also writes this a few times. A melech must be accepted willingly. A moshel, Fidel Castro. You remember Fidel Castro? He would give speeches for 8 hours, and everybody had to listen. He wanted to call himself an orator. There was only one difference. Nobody was there voluntarily. If you knew you leave in the middle of the speech, you know where you can end up. Stalin was one of the most boring orators of all times. I don't know if you ever heard his speeches, right? But nobody budged, and you didn't take your eyes off him. You didn't take your eyes off him. And he felt at the end, it was unbelievable. He's this, Winston Churchill. In reality, you were frightened. If you blink, you could be seen as a traitor and end up in the gulag, and that would be a good day, on a good day. You understand what I'm saying? There's no relationship. And the Moshel knows it, which is what drives him crazy.
And Churchill's a good example because he had a vision for the British people.
Yeah, he was different.
They rose, from their perspective.
Yeah. Churchill inspired a vision. He inspired a passion against tyranny. Stalin was operating on a level of tyrannical fear and craziness and insanity. We have here a few graduates of the Soviet Union who know exactly what we're talking about. So that's moshel. There's no relationship. And the dictators know it, and it drives them mad, by the way. And they become more paranoid. And if you mention this, you're dead, because this is the void that sits in them. Because you can't replace Malchus with Memshala. We all know that. You can have control over people, but deep down, the moment you turn around, the teacher, the moment he turns around, it's chaos in the classroom. So it's basically the grip of fear. The grip of fear is not a grip at all. It's a temporary grip. The moment people are allowed to breathe, they're out. They're out the door. You always have to ask yourself, what type of relationships do you create? If it's a relationship, right now you got the grip of fear, but the moment that grip is over, they're not looking at you ever again in the world, in life. Malchus is a completely different paradigm. Malchusai biratzon kiblu aleihim. It's a relationship. A relationship means everyone brings their entire self into the picture without compromising it. And that's exactly the relationship Hashem wanted. So he comes to the Jewish people and he said, I need you to coronate me. I can't do this. If I coronate myself, it's all nice, but then it's a different reality. I want you in the relationship.
What's the concept of the difference between this world and Mashiach is the Shul Malchus?
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. Yeah. That's why it's called Malchus. Reb Moshe Shapiro, Zechrona Levracha, was here a few months before he passed away. And I think the last year he ever gave in his life, or the second to the last year, was in Baruch Shul. You were there. Baruch Shul near Grandview. Oh, yeah, not far from here. He came here for treatments. It was a Shalosh Shudas. And, in Eretz Yisrael, thousands of people would go to his shiurim. And there he was in a shtibel, and there was Kama Minyan. He spoke Yiddish. Not everybody understood Yiddish. And he spoke for a very long time. So I was there for Shalosh Shudas. Rabbi Moshe Shapiro was from the big Bali Machshava in the Litvische world, and he used to teach a lot Kabbalah Sagra, the Kabbalah of the Vilna Gaon, and Bechlal Sifrei Kabbalah, Reb Tzadok, Maharal. And he said something. He said something very daring. He said that the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah that when Jews blow shofar, Hakadosh Baruch Hu oimed mikisei din v'yoshev al kisei rachamim. When the Jews blow shofar, Hashem gets up from the thrones of judgment and sits on the thrones of compassion. That's why Allah Elokim bisruah, Hashem bekol shofar. It starts off with Elokim and then ends up with Hashem, right? Midas adin, midas arachim. What's the meaning of the way you take a shofar and he changes seats? What is this, musical chairs? Like the music went off and God says, okay, let's change chairs. So he said that it says in Pirkei Avos, is there a siddur here? Rabbi, let's remind her. This has a Pirkei Avos here. So he said it says in Pirkei Avos, the end of Perek Dalet, the end of chapter 4 of Pirkei Avos, it says that Hashem is the Yoitze, the Boiri, the Maven, the Dayan, the Eid, the Baldin. Ein lefonav loy avla, loy shikcha, loy masifonim, loy makach shoichad. Hashem is not shayach to shoichad. You can't bribe him. There's no bribery. So there's the famous text. There's a different girsis. One of these is, why is there no shoichad? Why can't you bribe him? Shahakal shaloi. Because everything belongs to him. So how could you bribe him? What am I going to bribe you? I could bribe a judge. I'll give a judge $1 million. He doesn't have $1 million. That's a bribe. What if he has everything? What am I going to bribe you with? A cup of coffee? What am I going to bribe you with? A nice house? Protects you? I'm going to give you a good job? What am I going to do? Hakal shaloid. You can't bribe him. He says, what type of reason is that? He says, ilu yitzuyir. That not hakal shaloid. That if God doesn't have everything, then you would be able to bribe him. Right? You would be able to bribe him. So he said that there's one thing kevayachal that he doesn't have, and that is you choosing him. Because if he has it, it's him. The choice that a person makes, that he doesn't have. He says on Rosh Hashanah, when we make that choice, the Gemara says in Ksuvas, it's like a two amudim, about a lot of Tanoim and Ameirayim, that somebody did them a favor, and they immediately said, Paslinu leiladina, you have disqualified me as your judge. Yeah. The Gemara says Rabbi Shmuel was walking, and somebody made it easier for him. Rabbi Shmuel said, what are you doing? He said, I came for a din Torah. He says, sorry, it's over. Yeah. And he said at the Shir that once Rav Yitzchak Hutner was walking, and he was walking with them. And his lapel, his jacket was up, so he made it straight or something. So, the slabotker of Hutner's way of saying thank you, I appreciate it, was Paslinhu leiladin. You just disqualified me as your judge. This was his way of saying thank you. You just disqualified me as your judge. You bribed me. In other words, bribery doesn't mean, $1 million or even 10,000. Bribery is a kleiner shtickle covered. A Yid asked the Chafetz Chaim, who was becoming a Rav in a shtetl, what he should do as a Rav. So the Chafetz Chaim said, tell them not to wait for you for Isa Shalom. Not to wait for you for Chazar Sashatz. He says, that's the Shaykh that every community gives a rabbi, and he's not objective anymore. He's not objective anymore. But it was a good insight. You know, the Gabbai says, wait. You're already not objective. Oh, what's the grace? They waited another 60 seconds, yeah? Chafetz Chaim said, tell them not to wait. But it's a sensitivity. Bribery doesn't necessarily mean big things. You're not objective anymore. And the Bali Musar, where they understood this very well, all the Bali, they understood this very well, because people have egos.
So if God wants me, waiting for this, he could have created me that way. Why did he create me not to want?
That's the point. He could have created you as a robot to want him. That's why robots will never replace humanity. Even though we know artificial intelligence is going to take over everything. And our experts tell us that in a few years, nobody will have anything to do. So the pshat is, nobody will have anything to do when it comes to a pizza shop. You're not going to have humans run a pizza shop. What do you need humans run? Let robots run it. They'll make it better. It'll be more delicious. They'll deliver it. They work. They don't get tired. They don't need vacation. They don't have attitudes. They're not grouchy. Amachaya. Right. So the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, Perikir Aleph, the laws of Mashiach says, there's going to come a day, Ba'osei Hazman, Lo Yisham, Lo Rav, Lo Milchama, Lo Kina, Lo Tachrus, Shatoive Tia Mushpas Harbe, V'chol Ma'adanim Mitzuyin Ka'afar. The Rambam 900 years ago wrote, it's going to be a day, no jealousy, no war, no hunger, no egotistical competitiveness, because there'll be so much abundance, all delicacies will be like dust. Frag the Rambam, so what is everybody going to do a whole day? Was wird metan? That's what everybody's worried about. What are you going to do? Lifespan will go, according to science today, the lifespan soon will be 160 years. You retire at 65. Okay? At some point, your great-great-great-grandchildren are barely going to know you. What are you going to do a whole day? Remember, the shrig is also going to live 160 years. Remember, it comes with a price. Even Mashiach comes with a price. So the Rambam says, these are his words, V'lo yiyeh eisek kol ha'olam, ela lodas es Hashem bilvat. In other words, Likkutei Torah. It's not such a bad life. It's not such a bad life. Kamayim lo yom echasim. But the diuk in the Rambam is, what does the Rambam say? The Rambam says two things. Ha'toiv v'tiyah mushpas harbe, there'll be tremendous good, and all the delicacies will be like dust. The Rambam says two things. There'll be no rav, no milchama, no kina, no tachrus, no famine, because we'll tune into all the opportunities that exist in the world. There won't be famine. There won't be war. There won't be kina. Now, I just want to mention one thing. It's just, I think it's important for people to observe. I spoke about this Yom Kippur here. And that is that for most of human history, almost every person waking up in the morning thought about one of three things, which most of you, when you hear me say this, you won't even know what I'm talking about. And that's my point. Most humans, for almost all of history, when they woke up in the morning, if they woke up, thought about one of three things: death through famine, death through war, or death through infectious diseases. This was so common. This was so interwoven into the fabric of life. The lifespan was between 30 and 45. Why? Because tomorrow, any day, a disease comes, an infection comes, a germ comes. The Black Plague wiped out much of Europe. Different viruses wiped out 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million people. Countries, cities. And nobody knew what to do with it. They had to blame the Jews, right? The Jews are poisoning the wells. They didn't know about germs. They didn't know about bacteria. What you see with your eyes is reality. They couldn't even relate to these realities. Wiped out. War. Hunger. Hunger was as common as the sunrise. It's not like stores, food stamps, Shiner's Shul, soup. You run to Legend's, there's food here, there's a kiddush, there's a mitzvah. If there was no wheat crop, if it rained or it didn't rain, there was no wheat crop, yeah, or somebody came and stole it, kids were starved. Now we know what we feel like Yom Kippur after one day. What does it feel like 3, 4, 5 days? People don't understand. Yeah, this is the first generation, one of the first generations in history, that not everybody, but much of the world wakes up in the morning. They're not worried about war, immediate war. They're not worried about dying through a sudden disease or through hunger. You have to understand the miracle of it. This is not a simple thing. The Rambam describes this about Messianic times. And he says, no hunger, no war, no kinna, no tachris. And he gives 2 reasons. Because there'll be a lot of good, endless good. I once heard a word from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, the Rambam was very b'diyuk. Harbe explains why no hunger and no war. If there's a lot of good, so then there's no hunger. And I understand it doesn't have to be mulchama. But kina and tachros, jealousy, says, even if you're worth $2 billion, you're still jealous. Because he's worth $6 billion. Jealousy is not taken away. Just because you have a lot, you're jealous even more. People who have a lot are not jealous, they're not competitive. What's really kina? That's why the Rambam has to add something else. All these delicacies will be like dust. You don't get jealous about dust. You have more dust than me. You have more dust. You get jealous over $10 billion. Over dust, you don't get jealous. That's why he has to add. How did I get into this? I forgot. I mean, it's Geschmack in Yonim, but...
Needing promotion here is hard.
So he said, the moment I give you something that you don't have, that's what the Tanoim and Amoraim said. Somebody brought a basket of fruits to a field owner because he owed it to him, but he brought it a day earlier. He said, you passled me, that's it. He did it a day earlier. Little favors. That's what shaychad is, your passel. He said, the moment a Jew takes out a shofar and says, I choose you, Hashem, this he doesn't have. If he doesn't have it, it's shaychad. If it's shaychad, God says, sorry, I can't judge. So he stands up from the throne of judgment and he sits on the throne of compassion. He says, sorry, I can't judge you. Paslinu leila din, you disqualified him as a din. And that's the pshat. He said, we say in Shachris, Toiv yotzar kavod l'shmoi. Right by Hameir Lar is the first bracha, right? Toiv yotzar kavod l'shmoi, ma'oris nasan sviva. So what's pshat? So it says, Toiv, the good one, yotzar created kavod l'shmoi, glory for his name. What does this mean? The good one created glory for his name. So he said that the Vilna Gaon teaches, Toiv, because Hashem is good, yotzar, he created a concept of kavod l'shmoi, that somebody could give respect to his name. It had to be created. No normal human being is going to say that if I tell an ant to go right and the ant goes left, so it's disrespectful and I get angry. How can an ant show respect to me? And an ant and a human are not so far from each other. In some ways, ants are superior to man, which is why Shlomo HaMelech says, go to ants and learn about a work ethic. In Mishlei, he says, go to ants and see what it means not to be lazy. Still, nobody in their right mind is going to say, I'm having a really bad day because this ant is really not following my desire. It's a joke. So Hashem is hurt by me. If I acknowledge him, I don't acknowledge him. What's the joke? You ever saw a picture? I was looking at the pictures Israel's robot Bereshis took from they're getting close to the moon. So they took pictures from planet Earth, right? So you look at planet Earth and it looks literally like, from outer space, our whole planet looks like a little dot, like a marble. Mamish, a little point, like a speck, like a grain of sand. And you think this grain of sand, there's a lot going on there. They take themselves this grain of sand takes itself very seriously. I mean, Riboyne Shalom, just from outer space, not infinity, just outer space. The ganze Welt is Ashmek Tabak. Now you go into infinity, it's l'chayre nothing. Toiv Yotzar Kavod L'Shmai. He created this desire that I want to have a relationship. That's Malchus. Yes, he could have created you as a robot. That would also be him.
before we learned that the only one that we want to judge us is God, because He knows everything.
Yeah.
Now we're learning don't judge me. So,
that's what it really means. When we say don't judge me, it means don't judge me from a detached place. There's two types of judging. There's judging and there's judging. Al tadin es chavercha ad shetagiya limkaimai, because that's detached judgment. There's judging, right? Like a mother who really appreciates her child, judges her child. It's a different type of judging. That's a judging that's coming from a place of closeness. I know everything you're going through. That's a different type of judgment. So Shofar accomplishes the idea of din on Rosh Hashanah is not din, aloof. I sit on this throne and I judge you. Right, left, good, bad. The judgment is coming from that which he who really loves you and is very close to you. So that's the whole idea here of Malchus going down. In other words, what is the divine energy behind the separateness of man? Malchus. When that whenever we overcome that distance and the Olul goes back to the Ilah, the example is that, in dramatic terms, the neshama leaves its encasement and goes back to the Ilah. That's what Gan Eden is. What's Gan Eden? Gan Eden is not the neshama disappears. The word death is from our experience, right? From the neshama's experience, it's not death. The neshama's experience is it's continuing its life, but it's continuing its life in a way where the Olul is one with the Ilah. That's what Gan Eden is. Gan Eden means the neshama goes back to the Ilah. There's no separateness anymore. The tension that exists in this world doesn't exist in Gan Eden. So the pleasure is tremendous. It's the Eim Habanim Smecha. It's the Eim Habanim Smecha, where it can comprehend the Ein Sof, and a reflection of that happens every Yom Tov. That's the opportunity of Yom Tov.
Is it still separate, the neshama, or is part of one? If it's part of one, it's kind of dissolved in one, so it's not recognizable. So it's like a death also. It's dissolved. Yep.
You're asking, so it dissolves. There's nothing left. Okay, we'll soon see. That's a good question. Your question triggered a conversation.
if I want to experience or do Malchus right now, what would I be doing? I would be trying to connect with Hashem. That would make me have a Malchus.
Or the honey.
Is that what Malchus is?
In a person with Malchuses?
When they're very, very connected with Hashem, when they're very high in Malchus, or it's when they're influencing a lot of people?
Malchus is really the person in terms of a leader. In terms of, that's what Malchus is. Yeah.
So someone who's not...
And the prerequisite for that is profound dignity and awareness of your impact and awareness of your ability to impact. The Gemara says in Menachos about one of the Tanoim that he said, if you would have told me that I should become a Nasi, I should become a prince, I should become a leader, I would have taken a kumkum shel chamin. A kumkum shel chamin means a chainik, a kettle full of hot water, and pour it over your head. That's how much I didn't want it. But now that I became, if you tell me to leave, I want to put you before a lion. What's this? What is he talking about? The pshat is that once the Malchus comes out in a person, it's not easy to give that up because it transforms the person. You really become a different person.
So not everyone is fit for Malchus.
Everyone is fit. Everyone has Malchus. There's certain people who have it more, like every other quality, the Chesed, Gvura. Right? The Gemara says about Malchus based David. The Rambam says, "Ha-Malchus loyal laban of Keser Malchus hoil Monsey." The royal crown fits them. Malchus Yisrael don't have that quality of Malchus like Malchus Beis David. There's a certain quality of Malchus that they have. Some people have it more than others. By some people it's emphasized more than others. By some people it's brought out more than others. Everyone has the ability for Malchus. We all have to be a melech over somebody. Even if over our own habits. People around us, everyone. I mean, there's the bigger and smaller, but
Fix all the other midos before they get to Malchus?
it helps. It helps. Malchus is the moon. It doesn't have its own light, but it has its own unique light that it reflects from others. Malchus doesn't have its own quality. It just borrows everything I am. When I'm a king or a leader, I'm not an educated in a new way. I'm just using my previous talents. But they're all crystallized in a way that they were never before. You understand? It brings out a new level of self. It doesn't have its own light. It's like the moon. But the moonlight has a unique energy to it that sunlight doesn't have. This is all a mashal for Hashem's Malchus. Hashem's Malchus, kivayachal, right, is rooted in a very, very deep place, and it's what necessitates a relationship with the outside, with otherness. Toiv yatzar kavod lishmoi. There could be kavod lishmoi. That's a creation.
So moon reflects the lights of sun, right? Yeah. So he doesn't have his own, but he's a perfect reflector. Even could have been a body that.
You're right. You're right.
Like a black body that completely.
Yeah. The moon could reflect it, which is what a melech does. A melech means the first thing of a melech is that he's not here for himself. He's here to reflect the light. A servant for the people. If the moon was made up of a different material, it would reflect nothing. You know, the black holes, the black matter, it just absorbs all the light for itself, which is beautiful, but you're not a melech. The first prerequisite of Malchus is awareness of the people. There's a nation here. Shmuel HaNavi told Shaul, one of the most important words in history. Shaul said, I followed the people, they had compassion for Agag. And Shmuel said, Im katoin ata be'einecha, haloi roish la'alfei Yisrael ata. You may be small in your own eyes, Shaul. You're a humble person, you feel small, you feel like nothing in the eyes of God. Haloi roish la'alfei Yisrael ata. You're the head of thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews. You're the king of the Jewish people. So in the privacy of your room, you feel like still you're a yeshiva bacher. That was Shaul HaMelech. You know, he sat with the Gemara like a yeshiva bacher, a 19-year-old kid, hurrying over the pages. What do I have with Malchus? He says, in your eyes, that may be true, but halei roish la'alfi Yisrael. That's what you're missing. You're missing that awareness of where you are in history. And when you're missing that, it could be dangerous.
If he has it, he could be dangerous also because he can pump his ego.
Exactly. There's the famous word of the Baal Shem Tov in Parshas Shmini, that Aaron, right? It says that Moshe told Aaron, Krav, come to the Mizbeach and do the Avodah. So Rashi says, Aaron haya boish. Aaron was embarrassed. He was ashamed to come close. So Moshe said, Lama ata boish, lekach nefcharta. This is what you were chosen for. So the Baal Shem Tov says, this is why you were chosen, because you're ashamed. You were chosen because you were ashamed. Not why you're embarrassed, you were chosen. Lekach nefcharta, because you were embarrassed. Yeah. It was the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe with the Rebbe Rashab. His yard set was yesterday, Beis Nissan. So he once sent a Jew to be a shaychet in a community in Russia. So the Jew said, Amal, they used to know that a shaychet in many ways had to be a bigger Yirei Shamayim than everybody else, because till today, because the Rav has to show his sources. The shaychet is, what happens in Schlachthäusers is a little complicated. It stays in Schlachthäusers. Those who know Schchit, it's lebedik. So he sends this shaychet. So the shaychet says, Rebbe, ich will nicht gehen. I don't b'shum oifen. He says, why? He says, ich hab meide, that, I could be nichshel. Please send somebody else. He says, Vemen soll ich schicken? Emet says, was hat nicht gemeide? Who do you want I should send? Somebody who's not afraid. You understand? So, yeah, you're right. The humility of Shaul is what made him suitable as a king. But the humility extended itself into the moments of Malchus. So that's what Malchus. Malchus is the quality of leadership. A husband, that's why a husband, the Rambam says, yeah? The The Rambam says that a woman should make her husband feel like a melech. And then he also says that he should respect her more than he respects himself. He says both things. A real husband, a father it's all Malchus. Malchus means you're in a position of leadership. Don't respond like a baby. Respond like a king. There's two different responses. Do you respond like a baby or do you respond like a king? You know the difference? Like an adult and like a king, not just like an adult. A king in the sense of a leader. I'm a leader. I'm not a docile, spineless, insecure coward. In the room of the therapist, you could be that spineless coward. You understand? But when you're davening to Hashem, that's fine. You got to work through your stuff. You got to work through your fears. But when responsibility calls, you're the Lion King. The Lion King, right? That's what they call him.
But if you haven't done that until this point, how do you just walk in and say, I'm going to be the king today?
Well, if you walk in and say, I'm going to be the king today, it's not going to fly well. You got to be the king, not say I'm going to be the king. You hear the difference? Don't say you're going to be the king. Be the king. It's a big difference. Saying, I'm the king! Really? With a water gun. When you are the king, everybody responds. Don't say I'm the father of the house. Be the father of the house. A guy once came to me with his wife and he said, the Rambam says that the wife is supposed to say that the husband is the king. And my wife says the exact opposite. I said, the Rambam is talking about if the husband is a king, so then the wife could say he's a king. It's not about her saying that you're a king, it's about you being. If you are, she'll say it.
Husband's got to have that kedusha, and kiddush over Malkhus. He's got to have that kedusha, and then he'll be the king.
For that, you have to have both a deep dignity and a deep understanding of what the people around you need. Malchus is nicht so pashat. It's very deep. That's what a Rebbe is. Yeah. A real Rebbe is a melech. Yeah. Malchus.
You said that.
Let me learn about it. Yeah.
President.
A president. Yeah.
He's the same person, but we know stories from people who became rabbis.
Oh, you're right. That's my point.
Special community.
He's the same person the day he becomes president, but he's a completely new person. Now, I'm talking from an earthly perspective. What does it mean he's a new person? His hairdo is the same.
Different responsibility, different...
Everything inside of him takes on a different level of intensity. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. What I knew yesterday, I know today. But there's an urgency, there's a seriousness, there's a depth, there's a sense of duty. There's millions of people who are dependent. So everything is different. It elevates all my characteristics to another realm. There was a chassid of the Balatanya. I think his name was Rabbi Isaac Hammeler. The Balatanya told him once, do not become a Rebbe. He was a very, very big person. He told him, do not become a Rebbe. Yeah. And he said that, I think it was after the passing of the Mittler Rebbe, there were those, after one of the Rebbes passed, there were those who wanted to make him a Rebbe, a certain community, and he said that they brought a wagon to him, and he picked up 1 foot to go into the wagon, and then he remembered what the Alter Rebbe told him, and he said no, and he left. But he said he put that 1 foot into the wagon. And he said the transformation that happened to him was so profound that he understood why the Alter Rebbe had to tell him. Because it was such a profound impact that it had on him. Because given Malchus, it's something else. Huh? Yeah. But the Alter Rebbe said, still don't do it. That's a philotiffer. Better you stay a chassid. He remained. He remained the chassid of the Baal Tanya, the Mittel Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek.
His parsha, he strangled both.
Yeah.
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 This whole concept of we're talking about now, fully personified yourself during the Seder, when you have to be tuned to all different bondedness.
Yeah.
What these
V'igada levincha. Yeah.
that's the personification of this
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
I haven't seen one company where the CEO is a melech. All of them was CEO was a Moshe.
Weasels.
Feeling, and when you marry your children off, you get a new sunlight, you get a new feeling.
Same thing. Sometimes when you make a mitzvah for your child, or you marry off a child, and you see the next generation developing on their own, you feel Malchus. You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's not stam you're happy. Of course you're happy. You're very happy. Your daughter, your son. It's a deeper element of self that comes out. There's a part of self that you couldn't feel before. You couldn't feel it. And it's only because they're going independent. As your children move away, your daughter gets married, your son gets married, or another stage in life, and they make a life for themselves. In that separateness, you become a melech. You become a new person. There's something inside of you that comes out that never came out before. What is it? It's that quality of Malchus that can only happen because they have made choices as a result of your influence that have created a new independence for them.
Why is there an empty nest syndrome with people? Why do they get depressive?
Yeah, listen, there's another side to it.
Saying that, in other words, a person can make a choice
Yeah.
how they're going to react.
Yeah.
Now, I had a question about that choice, because the issue over there is that we've been discussing is that a person chooses a melech. So my question back to you is that choice that we have real, or is it just real narrow? Or what is it? How would the Rambam define our ability to be Mama Metzorah? That has to be something that is, to use the terms that we used earlier, it's in some shuta, that what we have is a real. Is that correct to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what does the Rambam learn about free will and disabled?
The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, chapter 5, says that free will is the foundation of Torah and mitzvahs. And the Rambam is a great advocate of free will, very strongly. How all of Judaism is based on it.
That it's an actual thing.
And despite the fact that we're born with dispositions.
To put the analogy before, it's not just my perception of it.
Right.
It actually exists.
Certainly the Rambam holds that way.
That when I'm aligning myself, I'm using that tool of free will to align.
Yeah. Bechira. Ja, welche nekuda?
Hallel, zum Skar, jetzt Leila. Gerät das sagt nur für Malchus selbst, der Mann selbst.
Ah?
Schon gerät auf Malchus selbst, der ist hier Malchus.
Clutter? Okay.
Jetzt Chibera.
Ja, okay. Da alle mit verstanden? Ja? Das ist...
That is so
Kann man bis zum Verbringen.
So important. I still have this question about neshamas, because this
Okay.
is,
We'll talk. You'll see you have to go to Shabbos. He's dealing with Yom Tov now. You'll soon see what Shabbos is. This is all Yom Tov. It's not Shabbos. Yom Tov is simcha, and then there's deeper than simcha.
Shabbos is deeper than simcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nicht der Indian of simcha, it's honig.
Einig, yeah.
Shabbos mit Yom Tov zusammen.
It's a pnimius. Alles ist pnimius da. Nicht stuck in chitzonius. You're stuck in chitzonius. There's no chitzonius here. There's no shtick. Nobody's making with their hands. And nothing is based on manipulation, protectia, family, Metzorah, traditions, Matzahs, Yerusha, garnish. It should fit in, it should look good, had tables, garnished. Huh? Nor der Eberste. So the nor der Eberste. Likkutei is only the Eberste, garnished, nothing else. Hafla v'fella.
That's why it's so simple. Yes, that's the most difficult thing.
Yeah.
That's what basically separates us from everybody else. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
There's one little thing.
Yeah. Behiskarev ha'olul elilasoi. Behigalois nigla alav oir ha'ila v'tehi ha'simcha g'doila. Huh? Masig zayin the ilah v'tehi ha'simcha g'doila. Just the olul being aware of its ilah is already a simcha, even before anything else. The awareness of your ilah, you're already there. I mean, to a significant degree.
Most of the time when we think about the ilah, we think about father, mother.
The ultimate ilah, of course. That's the father and mother, yeah.
That's basically the beginning of all the...
Of course. That's the ilah of ilah. Ilah's kol ha'ilahs. There's an expression in the Balatanya, ilah's kol ha'ilahs, v'sibas kol ha'sibas. The ilah of all the ilahs.
So is the word ilu comes from this?
The word ilah, I think it's connected to the word al, which means that which is on top, but not in space, in concept. The seed, the sperm, which is the source of the child, which comes from the father, which comes from his father, which comes from his father, etc., or mother. Adam and Chava were the ilah for the first children, who became the ilah for their children, and then that's how. So essentially, you can trace yourself back all the way to the source, Adam and Chava.
The ultimate programmer.
The ultimate programmer, right? The first code.
The first coder.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.